So we've decided to make a presentation about video games in the 1980s. So first off, we're going to talk about a little bit about the late 1970s. During this time period, there was a console called the Atari console. The Atari console was very popular during this time and had over 100 million uh, sold copies of the device. It was released in 1977, and unfortunately in 1979, several of Atari's programmers split up due to a dispute revolving royalties. And the programmers that left the Atari company founded their own company known as Activision, which is the first company to become a third-party game developer, which means that they make games for consoles that aren't their own.
In the beginning of the 1980s, from 1980 to 1982, there was an era called the golden era of arcade games, where these arcade games and arcades in general were very, very popular, and we saw games like Joust and Pac-Man um, gaining like huge fan bases. Um, Arcades were very common in the US at that point, and both Chuck E. Cheese and John's Incredible Pizza Company were examples of very popular and huge arcade chains where you could go with your kids and have some pizza, play some arcade games, have a great time. Home computer gaming was also very popular during this period of time. We had both the Commodore 64 and the CX Spectrum as the two leading computers. They were both very cheap, and yeah, many people had them. And the games made for these home computers were mainly like adventure games and text games, like Zork. What made Zork so special was the fact that you could actually conjugate verbs and create whole sentences. Um, Prior to Zork, you had only been able to enter certain keywords as pick sword or attack ogre maybe. But Zork was really well made, and it also had a great story to it.
In the year of 1983, there was this thing we called the video game crash. The video game crash revolved mainly around a lot of businesses seeing a great opportunity in making a lot of money off gaming or the gaming industry in general. This led to them kind of riding along the wave of gaming as it was completely booming at this time, and releasing like unbelievably many terrible games, which is quite quantity over quality at this point. The games were such poor quality that obviously no one wanted to buy the games, and in 1983 there was even this thing called Atari Video Game Burial, where the video game developers had kept all these games since no one wanted to buy them, and ended up burying them in New Mexico. So the rejuvenation of the console market. In 1985, the Nintendo NES, which stands for Nintendo Entertainment System, was released, and this was a huge success. This was mainly because of during this time, consoles usually had great gameplay and access to playing the game at a higher level than home computers had, but it typically lacked a lot of the store and the lore, which some players really missed, or rather wanted in these games. The home computer, however, didn't really have the same kind of or level of gameplay as the console, but it had the story, and this was where the Nintendo NES shined, as it was able to bring the strengths of the console and the home computer together and make a lot of good games.
Last but not least, these video
Blame.
games in the 1980s also had an impact on the film scene. We saw both Tron, War Games, and The Last Starfighter being released during the 1980s, and all of them actually becoming pretty good commercial successes. Um, they mostly featured some kind of programmer or um, what should we call them, gamer as the main character, and somehow they were pulled into the video game, or the video game turned out to be true or something. And it was some pretty cool movies, but it was the first time we ever saw any of these. Um, right here you can see our sources. We checked out some random websites and a couple of YouTube videos, and you can have this music as we exit. It's very good. It's the Pac-Man theme.